Welcome back to the 8-Man Breakdowns podcast. This is where we discuss all phases of the game of football, including philosophy, play concepts, questions, and more. Joining me today is Coach Kyle Bright. Coach Bright has been coaching for 10 years, with 9 of those years coaching at Macksville High School in Macksville, Kansas, where he has served the last 3 years as the Mustangs head coach. In his first season as head coach, the Mustangs went 3-5, followed by a 5-5 record in year 2, and finishing last season with an undefeated regular season and district championship before losing in the second round of the playoffs for a 9-1 finish, the best season Macksville has had since the fall of 2011. Well, Coach, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on.
Like always, I start with a little background information and just tell us a little bit about your high school days and what got you into coaching and any mentors you had along the way.
Well, I went to Macksville High School here in Kansas. I was a 3-year starter, all league type guy, all state type guy once I finished, and we had some success when I was in high school. You know, we made a couple playoff runs, and I played high school ball for Dan Grizel, who actually has the only state championship in football at Macksville. So but I just happened to miss that by 2 years or so. But with that, I went to Dodge City Community College for 2 years. I ended up being an all conference center for the Conks. I have spent the majority of my coaching career at Macksville. I did spend one season up at TMP there in Hayes. And what kind of got me into it was, when I was in high school, during our free time, me and a buddy of mine, we would just draw up a bunch of different plays, just to kind of look at them, and that kind of piqued my interest. And then when I was in college, obviously we all go through some difficult times, but then when I finally got met up with my advisor, Steve Sedbrook, he's the one that kind of got me lined out, and he's the one that got me going on the right track, and I've been in it ever since. So I've been actually doing this. I think this is my 10th season.
So being as you're from Macksville, a graduate there, would you say that was an easy choice to go back home and coach?
I think it was a very easy choice, yes, because I've always wanted to coach in my hometown, and I always had the aspirations of taking the program back to the heights that it had been in, and we did in a sense this last year with our 9-1 season. So that I can't really complain about that. Obviously our end result wasn't quite what we wanted it to be, but to have a good season like that, that's something that we were very proud of.
And then I wanted to jump back there, Dodge City. You're talking about you played JUCO, which I played JUCO too, but you were 8-man obviously. So going from 8-man into 11-man playing center, could you talk about the adjustment there? I guess from 8-man to 11-man, what was that like?
In my opinion, that's one of the most difficult transitions outside of quarterback. You know what I mean? Ever,
Yeah.
because like I played offensive line in high school, but I played guard, and we had one pass protection. So like I went in, and I was basically wet behind the ears. I honestly didn't know what I was talking about, and I learned a lot, because I had to learn how to point out the mic, and all these different pass protections that I had no idea about. And to me, it was a very difficult task, but I like to think that I'm a decently intelligent individual, so I was able to pick up on it fairly quick, and which helped me be somewhat successful.
You came from probably a more run-heavy offense at that time in high school, and being a center, you snap the ball and run block the nearest defender. Obviously, going into a 11-man system of pass protection, yeah, that would be a lot different. Were you in charge of the whole line? Like it was
Oh
your
yeah,
to point out
it
the
was, yeah.
mic?
I wouldn't say the captain, but I was in charge of making all of the calls. And for me, like I walked in there, I never even heard of a zone blocking scheme. I didn't even know what it was. So I guess maybe that was a good thing because I started fresh and I didn't have any bad habits. But I learned everything from that part of it, but also how to block. Like I was taught how to do it correctly for once. It was a big shift for me.
Yeah, and kinda like what you're saying, going from a system that doesn't have zone blocking or even a lot of the pass stuff. I was the same way in JUCO. I mean, I played a running back in an I formation in 8-man, and then I went and got to play I played a tiny bit of running back my freshman year on the scout team, but mostly slot receiver, and so I didn't know any 11-man pass concepts, until
Right.
junior college. Because an 8-man at that time, nobody did that, and maybe and a lot of teams don't even do that, but yeah, so it is a big but I love the JUCO days. I don't know about you. I love that. I mean, met a lot of
Absolutely.
friends and plus, well, yours is different, I guess. Dodge City is a lot bigger than Highland, but I went from a small, 8-man high school town to a not much bigger town of Highland.
Right.
So, but yeah, great times. So here,
Oh
let's
yeah.
go to this next one then. This is my staple question I ask everybody, but just talk about like what separates your program from others. What's something you guys do differently? And like I've always said, it's a copycat game overall. Coaches, borrow and share ideas all the time, but you got to make it your own. So what do you do or what did you do that separated your program from others?
You know, I think the different ways in which we block and our different schemes in that regard kind of make us different. I'm it's I mean it's all the same concepts, but just kind of how we pull from all different areas, and we run blast and that lead blocker comes from everywhere. So I think that's a big thing for us. But we haven't always been the most talented guys on the football field, but I feel like we've always gotten the best out of our guys that we possibly can, and I think that's always something that I've hung my hat on. I think us as a staff, we've done a really nice job of getting the most out of our guys because Maxwell is what is known as a basketball school. And I think for some of those kids, we've kind of reignited that love of football. So,
I definitely had not heard of Macksville when I was in school up until when 2007 when Macksville played Hanover, and because I had a couple
yeah,
cousins playing for Hanover, and I think Hanover was winning in that game at one point, but then obviously Macksville won. It was a close game.
24-20 was the final on that one. I
Yeah,
think.
and I take that back. What I meant was that was the first time I heard of them in football. Because in when I was in like 2003, 2004, somewhere in like fourth, fifth grade, we played Macksville in the semifinals state basketball, and we went out to Hayes and watched it uh, and
I was
lost.
playing that game.
And I was watching little kid, so. And then that next game we played
South Gray.
Or
No,
played South Gray
no.
the first round. Yeah, we
You
played South Gray
you
in the
you
first round.
played
We played Brewster, I think it was
Brewster. Yeah,
uh,
yeah, that's right.
Reed kid. I forget his first name, but yeah, and then he transferred to Topeka Hayden, I believe. But
He was a freshman.
yeah, hmm
Insane.
but yeah, that's the first I had heard of Macksville in football. So, Coach, could you talk a little bit about your offense and kind of just how you classify your offense?
Well, I would say we are a multiple formation spread offense with a very run heavy scheme. And we go anywhere from being in a double tight to having four wideouts. But even with having a bunch of guys split, I think one coach scouted us at 80-20 as far as being very, very run heavy. Um, but my thing about that is this right here, and this is something that I've had to tell some of my guys is, whether we go 18 for 38 for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns, or we go 8 for 12 for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns, which one's more efficient? And so as long as you're getting your yardage that you need and the effectiveness that you need, I don't see any reason why we have to throw the ball a ton. And that's just always how I have been.
What do you like most about that? The spread offense, just that being multiple, like you said, being a
Yeah,
multiple.
it's the versatility. It allows for a lot of creativity, and it gets your athletes in space as long as you do it correctly. And once again, if you don't have a large offensive line, as long as you have guys that are quick and can get in the way, then you'll be very effective.
I agree 100%. And I've always been big on a spread since I got the chance to run it in JUCO, and then I've seen a lot of teams being successful with it with maybe not as talented guys, because and
Right.
same thing goes for the zone run scheme. The reason I like that so much is because you don't have to have the biggest, fastest, or strongest lineman. If they know where they're blocking, if we're running zone left and they block the defender to the left, then it's up to the back. Put the responsibility on him to find the hole, but
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
so then here, would you mind talking about some play calling or game planning, like specifically how you game plan your plays each week?
Well, as far as play calling goes, it's pretty straightforward. Like, for example, for me, saying that we're in ace left, it is 17 speed option. I still use numbers just to kind of give them an idea of where they need to go. They don't necessarily have to go there, but just to kind of get everybody on the same page. But then as far as game planning goes, like when I watch film, outside of the same old thing that everybody does, which they watch for the different coverages and the different fronts, one of the things that I really hone in on is I watch the defensive end play the hardest or the most because and by watching film, I want to know which one is going to be our read end and which one's going to be the one that we try to attack the most. And then I also really analyze the nose guard and or the defensive tackles because their talent and their skill level will dictate our blocking scheme for the week. So, for example, if we are running a trap play if that nose guard's really good, then when we are down blocking, we're going to double team that nose to the backside linebacker. But if he's not any good, whatever, like say that we run dive option, right, or a veer option, right. A lot of teams want to double team that nose guard first, whatever. But for me, whatever, if he's not very good, then I want that double team on the linebacker so that we get him moving first. So that's where I really analyze that stuff. And then, because most people, it's a pretty much a given that at the 8-man level, your best athletes are going to be playing linebacker and or safety. But if the D line is ultra talented, then you still have to double team them.
Yeah, if
If
you
that
got
makes sense.
yeah, definitely. If you have good D linemen and 8-man, then because I mean I know for a fact when I was in high school, which I was one of our faster guys, but I've always obviously not been very big. I'm only about 5'6", but I played an outside backer in a 3-3, and I had Logan Howd, who was 6'6", like 240 pounds, right in front of me. So my job was easy in the 3-3.
Right.
So even if somebody is game planning for linebackers, like who's the weak linebacker, if they would have picked on me, then they would have had to worry about and double team that DN right in front of them, like you're saying. So, which
Right.
I probably need to look more into this. Like I do study like who do I think based off of on film, who's the weaker side of the defense or who's the the guy to pick on in the passing game or run game or whatever. But I wouldn't say I look at it as detailed as you as far as D tackles and D nose guards or D ends.
Right. But then also, I mean, for me, when I watch those defensive ends, one of the things that I really watch for is if he's going to come straight up the field because there are a ton of defensive ends that run straight up the field. That
Mhm.
makes for an easy kick out.
Yep.
Very very easy trap block. Um, and then also for us, I really want to know what a move does the nose guard do that is most effective. And then I make sure that our guys watch that on film. And I want them to be able to tell me, hey, he does this move the best. So that and I'll say, yes, you are correct. So this week we are going to work on doing things to negate that move.
That's a good way to make sure your guys are watching film. Like, hey,
Right,
what's this nose guard do? This week's nose guard or whatever. And I know Coach Detweiler at Axtell did a lot of that stuff, quizzing people of
right,
who's their best pass catcher or whatever. Like without looking at
right,
stats, what.
right.
But anyways, kind of talking more about this, and you're talking O line and trapping, and you were an O lineman in college and high school.
Right.
You just tell us like what's your favorite, your go-to run concept? I mean, if you had one run concept, what's it going to be?
I'd say from a play call perspective, I bet we ran trap the most. Trap or just a simple blast.
And so when you go trap, kicking out the D end or end man on the line of scrimmage, what's your rules there?
It is end man on the line of scrimmage. But also, so like if they walk up an outside backer and that end is head up over our tight end, we're just going to go ahead and block the end and then kick the outside linebacker.
Okay, yeah.
But even if they don't walk up that outside backer, if that defensive end is head up or inside, that tight end or the guard, whoever it is, he will give a what we call a Houston call. H, heads up, head up, head up. Hey, he is head up on me. I'm going to block him. That lets the backside guard know that he has to go to that next man up.
Yeah.
Just
So
easy switch.
okay, so then talking more about that, like your game planning and play calling specifically, like how do you know throughout the course of a game what plays you're going to run? I mean, are you scripting your plays and then just sticking to it, or what's your
I I'm not a big script guy. I'm a guy that kind of goes with the flow. You know what I mean? Because if I have it all scripted out and say, I mean, I and I've actually worked very hard on this. Is because if I just go off of script, what adjustments can I make based on that script? But my thing is this: based on the way that we call plays, no matter what motion we are doing, we can always trap off of it. No matter what, no matter what play, like even if it's a dive option, we can always trap off of it the other way. Like so, I just make it to where, to me, it's not necessarily off of a script, but rather just changing the terminology based on what I see from the defense throughout the game, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
I get it.
I have my set of plays that I like on a week, 2 week basis, but and I have it there with me, but I find myself not even looking at it as that game goes on, and I call plays based off of what I see throughout the game.
Yeah, definitely. I'm the same way. I have, and I last year I tried to be more if then, and I had my call sheet like if then, like if they stop this, then we got this. The only reason I was even asking that is because I really got into this R4, the accelerate everything or the true game planning system, and it's the same thing, and it's actually really helped me with narrowing down. Okay, where I've thrown out like three concepts, past concepts from last year because I was like, what if I grid this and I'm like, okay, that's what I see is open. This is what I like. This is what we would run, or I feel most comfortable. That doesn't fit into it anymore when I do that. So I've made a lot of changes with it, but I just wanted to, I'm always interested to see how other coaches do game planning throughout the
Right.
game. So here then, so let's switch sides here, talk defense a little bit. So what's been the most successful defense for you in your experience in eight man? What would you say?
Probably the most successful. I mean, in my opinion, I really like the 3-2. Now I'm also big on the 3-3 stack, whatever, but I prefer the 3-2 because it offers a very versatile look, and you can still stop the run as long as you have good linebackers and maintain good pass responsibilities. However, and this is something that I've had to talk to a lot of other guys about. Not necessarily other coaches, but my thing is, if you're going to run a 3-2, you have to have two gap players. Because if your linebacker is not a two gap player, then you can't run a 3-2. I'm sorry, it ain't gonna work. And if you can get your guys to be two gap players, um, I think that makes you so much more versatile. It makes you much more difficult to score on, in my opinion. Now, if you just want to be gap sound, that's fine, and that also works. But in my opinion, if you are just a gap sound defense where the outside linebacker has this gap, the end has this gap, like, and if you're only gap sound, then I think it's very easy to pull block on you and just down block everybody. And then when that happens, you should have a gaping hole. I mean, that's the way that I look at it. And I know, when if you look at a lot of the past state champions, you know, especially out of our league, they've all been 3-2 defenses. Um, I know more recently there's been a lot of 3-3 teams that are very, very good, whatever. But in my opinion, the most dominant teams that I've seen have been teams that can run a 3-2 defense.
Yeah. If you have the guys to do it, obviously, then a 3-2 can work. I mean, like this last year, we ran a 3-2 because of necessity. We didn't have depth. We only had 16 players, and we literally had maybe 3 total linebackers on our team. And so we were like,
Right.
we ain't gonna run a 3-3 because if one linebacker's hurt, we're screwed. Now whereas this year we might have 4 or 5 guys with 9 freshmen coming up, so we might run a 3-3. I like a 3-3, especially against these I formation run heavy teams.
Right. Right. Yes.
Blocks
Yeah.
and tougher angles for the O line. That's the reason I dislike a 3-2 is just everybody knows how to block a 3-2.
Right.
Even junior high players, know how to block a 3-2.
But like we have talked though, if you have a missile for a safety, that doesn't matter. I mean, he can get the ball because I mean, yeah, some people say that they account for the safety in their blocking scheme. That's fine. But if he is if you have a really good safety or what I call a monster back, then that doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah, if you run a 3-2 monster, then yeah, that's I mean, it's basically a 3-3 in the end, with the guy
Yes,
dropping
it
cover
is.
too. But yeah, I do think the 3-2s. I mean, obviously it's the most common, and probably because you get 5 in the box, you have potentially could go cover 3, and you feel safe defensively and in pass coverage.
Yes, that
But,
safety net, coach.
Mhm. So here then, just talk about last year. What'd you learn most about your team from last year?
I'll tell you what I learned most, from us or for us is that leadership is such a huge part of this at the player level. Yeah, there are all kinds of quotes, whatever out there about that stuff. But I'm telling you, um, my experience, you've got to have good leaders. And last year or the year before when these guys were juniors, they didn't really want to take on that role for us. Even though I begged them to, I just needed. I said, "Hey, we need you guys to be leaders." They just wouldn't do it. And then this year, when they were finally top dogs, whatever, they did a great job of leading us. And if you have a culture that to where your team leaders are basically just another set of coaches, then that's so big for us, and that's ultimately what we had.
Did you develop that, or it was just they became seniors and they knew, okay, well, we need to have some control.
Uh, we had a lot of guys that had been playing for 2-3 years already, and I think that was probably part of it more. That played a larger role than anything, because they knew what was going on and they didn't have any doubt on what they were supposed to do, and so and then with that comes confidence, and then with that extra confidence, you can obviously be a very effective leader.
So obviously you're a true football fan. You've been coaching now for 10 years and been a head coach the last 3. I know you're not coaching next year, but what are you looking forward to most going into next year?
I would say for me, being able to watch from the sideline, and gaining perspective simply just from observing some of the other coaches that I have not had the opportunity to watch coach yet, because you can learn a lot. It's kind of like what you said earlier. Coaching is a copycat game, and while I'm not doing it this fall because I'm taking on a much bigger role at a different school, I do think that there may be a day when I do get back on that sideline and I actually do coach again. And so with that, I might be able to learn quite a bit. So that's what I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I mean that'll be fun. It's definitely like you said, interesting. I'm
Right.
sure once you do step back, I mean you're still gonna have that coaching hat on, and you're gonna still be involved with it as much as you can, probably, or you're gonna be wanting to, probably, maybe, but yeah, that'll be fun for you. Last question here, Coach. What would you say is your biggest piece of advice to any upcoming football coaches?
Trust your instincts and never doubt your own decision making, because in the moment when you're coaching and you're making a big decision, whether you're right or wrong in that, the players have to believe in what you say. And if you doubt yourself, then they will see that and they will in turn doubt you as well.
Yep.
The biggest thing right there.
Yep. Don't second guess yourself. Yep. Absolutely. Well, Coach, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Coach. It's been a pleasure.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the 8-Man Breakdowns podcast. If you ever have a question for me, feel free to comment down below on this video or visit my bio to shoot me an email. If you've learned anything or enjoy any of these videos, please click subscribe and check out some of my other videos right here. And as always, guys, thanks for tuning in.